Welcome to Dream We Do, a poetry reading in celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. My name is Nia McAllister, and I am the Public Programs Manager at the Museum of the African Diaspora. As we gather in celebration of the legacy of activist and civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., we recognize the times we are living in and the foundational work still left to do in the fight for racial justice. We all have a role to play in change-making and collective liberation. So we must find our voice, find our pen, find our people, and find our way forward. In the spirit of celebrating the voices of change, today we will hear from renowned poets who share love for writing and storytelling, and who so excellently breathe life into memory. With that, it is my honor to introduce our first poet, Joyce Lee. Joyce Lee is an international storyteller and performance poet. Her performances of her own creative nonfiction writing constantly receive standing ovations and encores from her fans and personal heroes. Joyce Lee is an explorer of emotional and physical life. She travels the world and writes, but is not a travel writer. Instead, each piece, each place she wanders, each country is allotted by her to introduce its own spirit. Joyce listens to that spirit and takes notes. Sometimes the note is a memory, sometimes a story, but every time a poetic gift to her audience. Thank you, Joyce.
I'm gonna do a quick little love set. I love talking about love. So here we go. Who can mention love without trial? Show me a God whose might remains hidden, or a servant whose faithfulness went untested, I assure you. Trial is cemented in between the porcelain and metal of love's gold tooth. Trial remains a most forgetful piece of love, but yet remains. So who can mention love without trial? Who can mention love without maturity? Show me an infant understanding of sacrifice, or an adult with a childlike forgiveness. I assure you, maturity is the name of love's favorite designer jeans. Love sags in them so much so that people mistake maturity for many labels, but it is love's favorite fit nonetheless. Who can mention love without self? We have all been love's witness, watched it build and bend both knee and back in a twisted country. We've smelled it in burning tears, burned it on a cross, crossed it on a street, struck it with a club, clubbed it with a police baton and mistook it crazy, defined it militant, erased it white, opposed it black, mixed it biracial, torn it from bellies and Bibles and abortion clinics, and tried to hide its light from little Black boys and big gay ones too. But who can mention love? Who can mention love without mentioning all of these things? Continuing onward. This is to Baltimore. Dear Baltimore, Maryland hates you. She says you're too cold to be claimed, and you're too calm about your cold to be seen as anything but dead and dying more. You too hood, B. She can't water down your type of black, can't concrete your jungle to match her Chanel knockoff. You turn water into government housing. You turn concrete into sleeping bags. You turn street corners into walk-in pharmacies and ghettos into survival stories in wait. Maryland says she's too good for you. She said she came too far from nothing to rep it. She said you be making legit your side hustle. She trying to forget that part of herself. She paid for a new nose and got it all up in the air now when you can't afford the seat she set in for your own reconstruction, B. You Africa Black and Oakland hopeless. You doing too much and too little at the same time. That's why Maryland is doing Atlanta, because your touch is so callous. Because these new age Black folks no longer want to remember how much work Black still putting in. Georgia got that good hair. DC manicured. Brooklyn, it's platinum G'd and gentrification. B, you all Timbs and rubble. rebel and reckless for no reason. Only the raw can respect it, so I understand how a suit and tie can choke a strong neck till it's all blue collar and swollen knuckles and boots without enough straps to pull yourself up by. I get it like giving up on getting it their way. I get it like taking what's due and paying dues and just being yourself, B. They read the black in your name and not know at the side of it on every application, B. I get the struggle. So if you ever feel some type of way about Maryland leaving you because she prefers the Argyle sweaters of DC and the penny loafers of Georgia to the grit in your beautiful gold teeth, well then holler at me. Moving onward. If there was ever love and not the will for someone outside of ourselves to yield like a dog to the sound of our impromptu commands, if there was ever love and depth instead of death in the guilt trips of memory lane and insecure insecurities and the neediness and doubt, if the love is real, joy cannot exist amid another's captivity. If the love is honest, the observation of another trapped eyes, the quiet of a partner's tyrannized tongue would and should humiliate us. Love is free, and it costs us all. It costs us all of our selfishness and our stunted growth and our willful ignorance. Love costs. Our old traditions and ways, love costs complete obedience and loyalty to it. Love is power without ego. If we want love, we must trust its sovereignty. Trust love to stay for as long as it is welcome to be free. Love does not exist to eternally serve and salve our personal feelings. I declare my only truth. Love is and does. I have only heard two stories of love. He, they, she introduces and all is joy. He, they, she exits and all is sorrow. Love has taught me to consider both in gratitude. Oh, how grateful I am for love's comings and goings, to have witnessed it step in my home, to have made love to love, to have love hold me until it watched me sleep and sang of my beauty in the morning. What a blessing to argue and fight with and for love many a late night, to have it protect me. How rich I am to partake in the forgiveness of love, to be corrected, humbled by it, to know love is enough to be it, to know love enough to be its faithful advocate. How grateful I am in love's going. My sorrow is mine and mine alone. Love is free from sorrow. It bends to its own will, always. I am grateful to learn freedom by way of love's freedom, even if it means my transitory confusion, even at the expense of my own hurt feelings. I'm done. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for your poetry and for starting us off that way. Thank you. The next poet I would like to introduce is Daniel B Summerhill. Daniel is Assistant Professor of Poetry and Social Action and Composition Studies at California State University, Monterey Bay. His work has appeared or is forthcoming in Obsidian, Button Poetry, Rest and Moth, Cosmonauts Avenue, The Hellebore, The Lily Review, and others. He's performed in over 30 states, the UK, and was invited by the US Embassy to guest lecture and perform in Durban, South Africa. He holds an MFA from Solstice of Pine Manor College. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks, Nia. So yeah, I'm not gonna belabor either. I'm gonna hop right into these poems. This first joint is called Concerning Martin and Kendrick. And it's really just a meditation on those two folks and their bodies of work. I've been meaning to ask if "we gonna be all right" is optimism or a synonym for endurance. Like when I was 7 and wanted to fly, I rode my power wheels down 2 flights of stairs, my mouth a flask of blood, and my stepfather sung, "We gon' be all right." And I'm still not. So I got stitches. Instead, I wonder if I had let endurance have its way, if I'd still have a tongue to pray with. Tell me, is all right passive the way Mr. Martin was when he saw the mountaintop? What's the view like from there? You say, "We gonna be all right." He says, "We gonna make it to the promised land." And I wonder if this is it, if this all right is enough. No, I figured you more of the Malcolm type, K-Dot. Tell me, are we gonna be all right? Because I have a daughter now and I want her to grow old enough to bury me. Tell me, does the key Pharrell sings right in endure the hi-hat the same way we do, trying to dodge each stroke of the beater or trill through it? Is Lucy endurable? Tell me, Kendrick, are we gonna be all right? Cool. So this next poem is called Congregation. And it's really just like a thought about like what it means to be in a pandemic, to be sheltering in place or at home all the time. And just kind of thinking about the other ways that we can be in congregation or that we have been in congregation, we meaning Black folks. Congregation. The few seconds after untying our do-rags is a congregation. The collective's thundering gasp, its benediction and stretched line running from forehead to ear is a congregation. Anticipatory rock and lean during an onset, the beat is a congregation. Everyone's a baritone. For Biggie's sake, we on cue. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine, Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up in the limousine. Rap the rest. Instead of finishing this poem, you started doing it anyway. Welcome to the congregation. Cupid Shuffle isn't a line dance, but a congregation. We dancing, but ain't never in a line. End up wherever our shoes take us, spinning twice more than the song says. Uncle so-and-so's hip don't hurt today. Body ain't rebelling today. It's a part of the congregation. Our hips are a congregation. Got me fucked up is a congregation. The same way I wish a motherfucker would is both prayers or rhetorical devices, as if to say, we disagree, but I got God on my side. Word, okay. This next poem is called Today's Prayer, and it has this little epigraph at the beginning. My son, tell them the body is a blade that sharpens by cutting. Ocean Vuong. Today's prayer is for honing still, a third testament that Black folks anchor to their galvanized body in ink. Today's prayer is for radical revision. In this variation, Jesus grew up in Oakland off Seminary. In Oakland don't have two cheeks. After the first, you'll discover how sharp Black can be. In this variation, Simon, Andrew, and John are Angela, Eldridge, and Huey. Today's prayer is for honing still on a chopping block. Today's prayer is for peer review. Today's prayer is to revise and resubmit. Today's prayer doesn't include submission. Today's prayer is broadcast from Calvary, and Longinus did not get the good side. In this version, we don't lose blood, just dull shrapnel. Today's prayer is for a blade. Today's prayer is for a self-sharpening body. And I'll end by a poem called Ain't We? Ain't we fly? Don't we be brown unapologetically? All new Negro movement and fist on Pennsylvania Avenue. Ain't we right now? Like yesterday happened, we'll go to a funeral tomorrow, but today is kissing my forehead soft. So I think I'll stay here for a while. Ain't we a magician? Make feast out of famine and few, turn a pot of collard greens into a love story, the kind of dopamine that'll put you to sleep. Ain't we bold? Don't we sing gospel hymns on Sunday mornings and redemption songs on Monday night? Ain't we fly? Don't we make up a new grammar like the dictionary was too boring, so we added an extra syllable to the end of baby girl's name? Ain't there a red line under ain't because it still hasn't made its way into the Webster dictionary? Don't we make the alphabet sound cool? Euphemisms and sublime because ain't politically correct. My Ebonics is a language you can't hear me because you refuse to listen. Ain't we fly? Don't our crowns be heavy, but we still manage to keep our heads up. We make a movement out of a movement. We dance until our lineage drips from our pores, sing both folk and Negro spiritual, sing an angelic dialect, sing we shall overcome, sing we gonna be all right, ain't we fly? Don't we defy binary? Make space between brawny and plush, find comfort in valley. Even as the sun skips past the spine of America, we still wake up each day and send shockwaves to the cerebral. We be both blood and backbone of this country. Yes, all 5/5, hair coiled in harmony like black fists, sing in the same tongue we learned to pray in. We knew poetry before we knew God, the way our elders showed us the psalm. Our breath be worship, ain't we fly? Ain't this poem a celebration of those things they either knock or claim as their own? For that little black boy who was silenced in elementary school when he told his teacher he wanted to rap when he grew up. Freestyle, black boy. Music is our bond, our blues, our divinity, our peace, our voice. In praise of our voice, sing, we gonna be all right, sing, we gonna be all right, sing, we gonna be all right. Ain't we? Thanks.
Wow, thank you so much, Daniel, for uplifting us with your poetry. Thank you. Next up, I would like to invite and introduce Jule Gomez. Jule is a novelist, essayist, poet, educator, and public speaker. She is the author of 8 books, including the first Black lesbian vampire novel, The Gilda Stories, which has been in print more than 25 years and was recently optioned by Cheryl Denier for a TV miniseries. Her work has appeared in numerous anthologies, including Dark Matter, A Century of Speculative Fiction from the African Diaspora, and Red Indian Road West. Her plays about James Baldwin and Alberta Hunter have been produced in San Francisco and New York City. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity to read with these other wonderful writers. And in celebration of Dr. King, I feel, always feel his spirit, especially in times like this where you feel like the lunatics have been loosed upon the world. So the first piece I'm going to read is a monologue from my play, Waiting for Giovanni. And it's a monologue by Lorraine Hansberry as she's talking to James Baldwin, trying to convince Jimmy to publish his novel, Giovanni's Room, and he's despondent because he and his lover have just broken up. Dear Jimmy, we each suck our words from the breath the dead leave behind. Don't lose sight of that. Jet magazine published a picture of Emmett Till's mother, Mamie. She went to the train depot to get his coffin and insisted on identifying her son's mutilated body in public. The barbed wire that held that boy's corpse down in the muddy water of the Tallahatchie River was not wrapped around his neck anymore, but it was a brutal sight. In this picture, Emmett Till's mother is collapsing under her grief. Her knees buckle and 2 men are holding her up. Her head is thrown back oblivious. Her upturned, handsome face is a mask of desolation, a face her son will never see again. Those killers looked at Emmett Till. They did not see a young man. All they saw was a symbol of sexual perversion. But was it ours or their own? Emmett Till's bones will long be dust before anyone understands how we need to speak of love. If we don't start listening to each other, Armageddon might come quietly, like a whisper of gossip, weakening us until we can no longer hear. When the mystery is too overwhelming, you dare not disobey. Remember that? The mystery of desire draws you to this novel, just as it drew you to Luke. And if things are not working out with you and Luke, I am so sorry. I have to believe there will be other loves. But books, true books, do not pull up to our stoops in taxi cabs. It's the beginning of a new world, Jimmy. Damn the critics. This poem is called More Than One. I was the quiet one, except in school where I made the students laugh and the teachers cry. Why was I so smart, they'd ask. So smart ass, they meant. To them, I squandered my talents for waitressing or typing by noticing history. I was the abandoned one, too dark for my mother, too fat to work in television, too light for the Black movement, too kinky-haired for the tribe. I was the mixed one who spoke of only a single ingredient, fitting myself into the times, Ungawa, Black Power, leaving the rest for TV Westerns. I was the femme one who could have sex with a vice cop or a diplomat to put myself through school. As long as I wasn't on the street, it felt much like a date. I was the queer one with no discernible type except butch, black, white, brown, in no particular order. Then I was given a name and learned I was not a one, but many, carrying my generations wrapped like a precious blanket around me, woven from Iowa, Wampanoag, and Cape Verde threads, wearing my wampum, not trading it, still making some laugh and some cry. Excuse me, I grew up in Boston, and I lived right near the car, what they call the car barn, where the trolley cars were kept at night. And since I moved to San Francisco 20 years ago, San Francisco started buying up old trolley cars from around the world. And one of the cars from Boston, I've seen many times. And the first time I saw it, my memory flooded back about an incident. So this is the Boston streetcar, 1958. My grandmother caught me staring at the numbers etched above the wrist bone of a white woman's arm. Breath stopped in my throat when she nudged me with her elbow sharp. Already at 10, I was embarrassed at seeming rude. We sit in the trolley, colored and not, waiting for it to pull out of the car barn, and the space became small. I look away at my shoes, at the split seat cushions, tufts of cotton sprouting as if waiting to be picked. I gaze at my own hands, soft and unmarked. I glance next at the sleeve of her coat. Black cloth, cuffs not frayed, a bit too short, but unremarkable. The buttons in her lap said nothing either. A straight march of dollops leading up to her face. A shock of blue-white cotton collar at her neck stopped me from going further. Our orange streetcar shakes and sways to life, downtown adventure by way of Tremont Street. At each stop, back and front doors creak folding open an odd welcome in their hinges. Saturday climbs on boards, noisy boys, beribboned girls, brown, black, white, each a universe patched around me like those pastel states in maps of the country. They balance loosely above, swaying close on leather straps. The car rolling on its track is usually soothing, but the shock of her thin wrist recalls a movie, black and white, war faces, marked by shadow a child can't understand. Until then, on that trolley, it was all dramatic fiction, crafted from nightmares. Today, the Boston car travels Market Street, the same clanging sway, orange, lumbering beside palm trees, 3,000 miles from home. Whenever it passes me now, I see her face, younger than my grandmother. At a stop before ours, she stepped down to the street and looked back at me, thin brows and firm lips framed by limp curls that did not shine. Her eyes dark as an empty room. Excuse me, and I wanna close with this piece. Sorry, and I like Joyce, think love is an important thing to keep beside us and inside of us as we go through these times. This poem is called Loving, and it was written about Mildred and Richard Loving, who had to go to the Supreme Court to have their marriage validated because she was Black and Indian and he was white in the 1950s. And I dedicate it to my mother, Dolores, and my stepfather, her second husband, Peachy, who was a white French Canadian. Loving. The parallels embed like deep mud ruts in a country road. One, I wish I had traveled to meet that couple, to learn what made them see themselves, Indian and colored, living with white, an uneasy mix for my own mother further north, but that not that much later than the Lovings. New England is not Virginia, but maybe it is when it comes to color. Mildred said they burned a cross on her yard in the 1950s while she and Richard fought to be a married couple in their home state. Up north in the 60s, they didn't have the tradition of a cross, so just burned trash in the front of my mother's flat. Small orange flames reflected in living room glass, blaze enough to scare. Virginia called its law a protection of racial integrity, as if whiteness is a land whose borders must be guarded. Perhaps it is. In the end, it must be about only one thing. When asked if he wanted to send a message to the Supreme Court, Richard said, "Tell them I love my wife." Truth so plain and simple and so complex and terrifying, only those 4 words convey it. My mother's husband said it many times in the privacy of their little flat in front of our family with pride. His own had turned away, pretending he was dead when he married her. One Christmas, he gave her 20 tiny bottles of perfume, all delicately wrapped by large cab driver hands, admiring the sweet little bows and loving which went into each. I saw into a deep place that words cannot reach. He made a choice to lose sisters and sons in order to have my mother. Not much darker than him, really, but from another universe in the mind of their small town. Now I imagine walking down that dry Virginia road to the rural place that held Mildred and Richard in their embrace, even when the sheriff would not. They'd invite me to sit in the yard beside a well-used tire swing to drink a glass of sweet tea. I'd ask them how they learned the secret, so I'd know what it meant to be my mother and how her husband felt fashioning that ribbon, and what it might mean to me walking on a similar road, holding hands with a different race, a woman, she and I loving. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jewel, for so beautifully sharing your poetry and your storytelling. That was incredible. And finally, it is my honor to introduce our last poet for this afternoon, Marvin K. White. Marvin is currently the full-time minister of celebration at the historic Glide Memorial Church in San Francisco, California. He is a graduate of the Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California, and the inaugural public theologian in residence 2017 through 2018 at First Church Berkeley. He's the author of 4 collections of poetry published by Redbone Press, Our Name Be Witness, Status, and the 2 Lammy-nominated collections, Last Nights and Nothing Ugly Fly. As a public theologian and community-based artist, he's articulating a vision of social, prophetic, and creative justice through being a poet, artist, teacher, facilitator, activist, community organizer, preacher, homemaker, cake baker, and Facebook statistician. Welcome, Marvin.
Hey, Moad. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in your MLK programming today. I'm going to read for you what I consider to be a gathering poem. I'm going to read a poem that I hopefully will call us all in. Gather together and call the name. Son, father, grandfather, uncle, and brother. Gather together and call the name. Daughter, mother, grandmother, aunt, and sister. Look for all the same differences in our bodies, lips that we know are full with kiss, noses that we know swell with shine, foreheads that soak sun and reflect moon, and hair that naps tight with curl. Be told we are sons and daughters from a long line of sons and daughters, and we who have been taught to forget are remembering our own today, and we will tell and retell our stories and our histories. And it looked like you, it's brown and it's browner. It smelled like you, it's earth and it's musk. It's strong like you, it's backs and its shoulders. It's soft like you, it's hold and its stroke. It's sound like you, it's drums and it's jazz. Do you hear it today? It's the song that's swayed to, the song that makes you close your eyes, shake your head and slow nose and beg to have your burdens lifted to. It's the song that lulled the baby on the hip. It's the song that saved the captured on the ship. It's the song that says, tonight we run to freedom. And the night and the song has always been ours. The no more auction block for me. The precious Lord, take my hand. The come by here, Lord, just come by here. And it's rolling in like a spirit riding a storm. Listen to the calm in your bones and listen to the trees cry, and they do. Listen to all things that warn you to hold on and hold on to him and to her like this, like sea gripping land, like night blanketing stars, like shore spreading, pulling rivers through, like east and west wind fighting to hold on to one another as they turn in wild tornado. Can you feel it like the shakes before an earthquake? Can you feel it like the itch in your palm when payday is near? Can you feel it like the still bird song before an eruption? Can you feel it rolling in like a spirit riding a storm? The tear, the anger, the funeral, the eulogy, the blacks, the food, the cremation, the scattering, the babies, the beloved, the bashed, the fight, the crack, the guns, the vigil, the march, the protest, the growth, the scream, the community, the voices, the prayer, the hold, the strength, the night, and you who have prayed to sun gods know that love is nothing if it's not ritual. And you who have held on to centuries know that survival is nothing new. And you who have gone inside one another know that it is deep enough to hide one another. So gather together and call the name, son and daughter, in the club and in the bar, until it burns in the roof of our mouths. Gather together and call the name, father and mother, in the home and in the house, until it melts like butter candy under our tongues. Gather together and call the name, grandfather and grandmother, in the kitchen and in the shed, until it runs through thick like blood. Gather together and call the name, uncle and aunt, in the church and in the choir, until it raises our cries to gospel. Gather together and call the name, brother and sister, in the park and in the bush, until it twirls us into a mantra of black on black love. 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 Black on black love.
Thank you to all the poets who have shared today. Your poetry and stories have uplifted us and are a reminder of the important role of artists and poets in documenting our times. May we honor the leaders who have come before us, like Martin Luther King Jr., and may we continue to celebrate those who still walk alongside us today. Thank you all, and enjoy the programming to come.